endeavor. Are pretty exciting. Is it worth it to but others to use them as a spy? The best period of time, 50 to 60 years. Was an American spy. He learned as a spy at the Central Intelligence Agency, CIA. It's better to avoid any mishaps. This different situations with different needs over the years. This tidbit reveals used in handling personal, business, and political. This summary leads to good decisions. Thinking works in such a way that collecting information leads to detailed examination of the data collected. Analysis leads to action. The chain action. Data is collected by populations. For data workers in the spies. Chapter 5. Pay attention to the marriage where the benefits are what keeps it together. The addition of the gains usually yields a positive result. Positive-sum games entail exchange, voluntary action, and it is beneficial to both sides. Negative-sum games are wars of reducing the strength of others through sustained attack and are quite rare. Although both sides are losing, they still hope that they're not losing more than the other. The game is over when one side realizes they're losing more. For example, in a situation where a company decides to reduce the salaries of its members, everyone is affected. Still, the impact on the workers will vary depending on the amount they earn and their expectations. If a worker expects that 30% will be deducted from his salary and eventually 20% was removed, that will sound like a win to him despite the ugly situation. Negative-sum games are like heavy elements that live for a short time before decaying into something else. John Braddock. Understanding positive-sum, negative-sum, zero-sum games will help your reasoning and enable you to learn people's thinking processes and to predict their next line of action. Chapter 6. It is very low cost to think, but taking action tends to be more expensive. Data collection has become more affordable due to the emergence of technology, but analysis is becoming more complicated and expensive. Making good decisions can be quite expensive, but taking action costs much more than deciding what to do. Below are the reasons why actions are expensive. Time, resources, commitment. When you are thinking, you can stop, take a deep breath, trace your decisions backward, collect more data, and do more analysis. But when you begin to act, it isn't easy to turn back. One of the things that commit us to the path is action. The first trend of the DADA chain is cost. The price of gaining or losing goes up as you move towards action. For example, if you spend more time gathering data than analyzing them, you will not completely analyze all the data. If you spend less time taking action than making decisions, you will end up not achieving anything. Successful thinking is dependent on spending the right amount of resources on data collection, analysis, decision-making, and actions. The second trend of the DADA chain is quantity, the amount we are working with at each step of DADA. In this trend, the actions we take are fewer than the data we collect. Most times we gather a lot of data, and as we begin to analyze them, we let go of some. After analyzing, we filter the data at the point of making a decision, and it reduces again. By the time we get to the point of taking action, the data we have left is extremely few. While collecting and analyzing data, we won't make the right decisions. And if we make wrong decisions, our actions won't yield any good results. Chapter 7. An example of how the zero-sum game played out in the life of the former Iraqi president, Saddam Hussein. In 2002, before the Iraq Weapons of Mass Destruction, WMD, the big question was whether Saddam Hussein had any WMD or not. Some people said that Saddam Hussein had it, while others said he didn't. The US declared that they would go to war with Iraq if Saddam Hussein didn't destroy the WMD he claimed to have, or prove that he had none at his disposal. This was a zero-sum game where Saddam either got rid of WMD or went to war with the United States. But Saddam Hussein didn't see the US and even the UN as his major enemies and wasn't trying to be a threat to them. There were many internal enemies around him because he assumed power via a coup d'etat, where many of the members of his party were killed after the event. He was always scared of his life. That was a zero-sum game, where losing the game also meant losing his life. Saddam Hussein also saw Iran as the enemy because of the brutal border war Iraq and Iran fought in the 1980s. This made him scared of war in the future. The dictatorial rule of Saddam Hussein was characterized by brutal, costly, and failed wars against neighboring countries. In a bid not to appear weak to Iran, Saddam Hussein wanted them to think he had WMD to deter attacks. He also didn't want Iraq to have WMD in their possession so his power wouldn't be threatened. So he had to create the impression that he had stockpiles of WMD, but in reality, he had just very little. This strategy worked until Saddam Hussein had to choose between winning his top two games, internal battle in Iran, and going to war against the United States. He later decided to take care of his immediate threats, and that decision cost him his life. From this story, it is evident that one person will have to lose in a zero-sum game, and the other will win. It's also better to be on the winning side, especially if the matter on ground is a threat to your life or will cost you significant discomfort. When you find yourself in a zero-sum game, the DADA chain should guide you in your decision-making. Conclusion. Thinking is a significant aspect of a spy's job. Two tools that help the thinking process are the Data Analysis Decision Action (DADA) chain and the Positive Sum, Negative Sum, Zero Sum framework. These two tools primarily focus on improving areas where our thinking might be faulty and help us prepare for a future situation by thinking ahead. For example, when you gather the wrong data in the DADA chain, all the other steps will be wrong. The next thing to do after good thinking is a good strategy. Good strategy simply means thinking accurately. So you're required to select the right options and make correct decisions. And if you don't, the reverse is the case. Making good decisions is not an expensive venture, but acting on those decisions may be costly and time-consuming. Nonetheless, it is very rewarding. Going through the DADA process may seem like a waste of time and energy for the average person. However, we live in a dangerous world where people want to take advantage of others, and criminal activities are rife and recurrent. We simply can't keep losing at all times. Therefore, this might be a good time to learn how to act in the most challenging situations so that you don't end up in a zero-sum game. Viewing life from the lens of a spy puts you in a position where you're required to ask lots of questions, and you can predict the actions of others. If you do this, there's a high probability that you will always end up winning your battles. Try this. When you're facing a problem, collect data on the issue, analyze the data, and examine your options. When you're sure of the options available to you, make decisions and take the necessary action.